Good evening, everyone from Dhaka, Bangladesh. My name is Saqib Haq. I'm from the International Center for Climate Change and Development. I'm very delighted for all of you to join us for the closing of our fourth annual Gobeshona Global Conference, GGC4. I'm delighted to have our esteemed panel and the panelists with us joining from the different partners that we've been working with over the years. And what we would like to be doing today is to sum up the week of sessions, very interesting discussions that we've been doing all throughout the conference that have been happening with our partners that have happened globally, with many of our partners speaking directly from the communities and the local context that they've been focused in activities that they've been doing. And this really enshrines some of the ethos of the Gobeshona conference that we have. So for those of you that know about our Gobeshona platform and our work at ICCAT, this platform is established under the vision of our former founder and director, Professor Salim Haq, who really envisioned this to be a way for us to learn from local communities, understand the impacts that they're dealing with and the solutions that they've been working on, and really champion some of the activities that local adaptation initiatives are the forefront of. In many cases, quite a lot of the work that we do are learning from local activists, local individuals that are really taking adaptation initiatives in their own hands, in their own context. And the platform that we have here are for researchers, practitioners, development partners, funders, to really understand about the local issues, but also see them as innovators, as initiative takers, people that are actually focusing on the activities that they're doing, and how can we support them? What's the best way for us to collaborate? What's the best way for us to be able to look at the impacts that they're dealing with, and how can we really support those initiatives going forward? So I'll give an overview of what's been happening throughout the week. If my colleague could please share the slides. So we've started from the 1st of March, where it was just really the opening session, setting the tone for what's to happen coming throughout the week. For many of you that have been our partners and working on our sessions with us, you will know that a lot of the planning and behind the scenes work really takes a lot of effort and a lot of planning to be able to find the right time zone to do the sessions, to be doing the thematic work, finding the speakers, finding the local initiative takers to come and talk about their work. And over the course of the week, we've been very grateful for the number of sessions that we've been able to have and the diverse perspectives and initiatives that we've been able to sort of highlight and focus. Next slide, please. So we categorize quite a lot of our work based on the type of sessions that people are interested in delivering. So thematic sessions are really focusing on some of the areas that people are working on, whether it be climate change impacts happening in the water sector, in agriculture, in livelihoods. But it's really about some of the work that the community members are doing. So we classify those as thematic sessions. The opening and the closing are the sessions that we try and garner a lot more support for people that generally aren't able to follow us throughout the week, but for them to sort of get a feel and a sense of the activities and panels that are happening. And overall, throughout the week, we've been very grateful for our partners. We've managed to do about 68 sessions. So that's roughly about 10 sessions a day, which is a very big undertaking. And we're very grateful for all our partners taking the time to support us in this initiative. Next slide, please. So when we talk about thematic sessions, these are some of the themes that have been very relevant for this year. So again, for a lot of you that have been in the climate space, working within the international discourse on climate change, or even in your local or regional activities, climate justice has really become a forefront and a topic that has come really in the forefront of a lot of the national planning as well as international discourses. And we were very grateful for a lot of the discussions that have come that have really enriched that discourse that has been happening, that we've been seeing over the last few years, not just in identifying the issues of climate justice, the sort of victimhood issues that people have been talking about in tackling the impacts of climate change, but also in solutions. There are different ways that people are taking these issues forward, working on locally led adaptation and capacity building, and what are some of the ways that people are really being innovative in the areas that they're working. And we're very grateful for all the different themes and topics that have come throughout this year. And hopefully we look to have some of the smaller bubbles that you can see over there in the word cloud in future years and future discussions and conversations, for those to have a lot more prominence, so that we're really able to take the climate action that we're doing collectively, but working on various different themes and topics going forward. Next slide, please. So for many of you that weren't able to follow us throughout the week, what we do try to do with all of the sessions that have happened, whether they're thematic ones, arts and cultures, or even high-level keynote sessions, what we try and do is really synthesize the knowledge. So if you're not really able to follow the full hour-long, 2-hour-long discussions in many cases, we do have, if you follow us on our social media platforms as well as our partners, we have key messages that have come through the sessions. So it really condenses quite a lot of the discussion that's been happening. But if you do have the time, I would recommend that you follow us on our YouTube page, where you're able to follow the sessions live. So what we do is we record the sessions as they're happening throughout the week. And then after a sort of editing and sort of trimming and pieces here and there, we're able to really put the entire conference up on our YouTube playlist. And we've done so for the past 3 years as well. So please do look out for the Gobeshona Global Conference YouTube channel. And on that, you'll be able to find not just this year's sessions coming forward, but also even discussions and topics that were done in previous years, and really use that to enhance your learning and understanding about the areas that you're interested in. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this really takes quite a lot of support and partners from around the world. So we're very, very delighted that we're able to have so many pins across various different countries, continents. Hopefully, again, as we go forward and really keep going with this Gobeshona platform, we're able to add more and more pins coming forward. So hopefully, if your country or your region is not represented here, please do reach out to us and we'd be happy to discuss with you ways on how we can add your pin on the map for next year to come and for many years to come forward from that. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is a platform that we've been sort of developing over the last 4 years. We're still learning on the best ways that we'd be able to get this platform to be really, really impactful and really sort of interactive with people. So one of the ways that we're really able to allow local activists and champions that are doing adaptation on the ground to be able to talk about their initiatives is by providing translation and interpretation. And that's one thing that we've been trying from the very first year. And we're very delighted that a lot of our partners that are able to work with their community members, work with their local government officials, work with their local activists, and get them to be the one that presents, not just us as organizations that are working and used to attending these sorts of events, attending these sorts of conferences, but really allow the community members to talk about their own issues in their own language. And we're very, very delighted this year. This was sort of a new challenge for us to have a sign language interpretation. That was something that really threw us off the track for when we were planning on it, but we're very delighted that our partners that were providing the interpretation services were able to come through, and they were able to pull off a really innovative session with sign language happening interpretation live as the session was going forward. One of the other inclusions this year is on arts and culture. So as I mentioned, quite a lot of the work that we've been doing tends to become very, very monotonous when you're doing 68 sessions across the week, where it's only PowerPoint presentations and it's only slides, and it's very, very dense and sort of heavy information that comes through. So what are some of the different ways that we can convey messages? What are some of the different ways that we can collect stories? What are some of the different ways that people can express the work that they're doing and really champion the initiatives that they're taking forward? And we're very, very grateful for the partners that were able to join us for the arts and culture sessions. For many of you that were joining us, it was a set block throughout the week, where every single day we would try and have a different sort of medium be represented, whether they be through posters, through poetry, through music videos, any medium that really our partners are working on in other formats, rather than just having PowerPoint presentations delivering the key messages, but really being able to showcase the work that they're doing. So we're very, very grateful for the partners that have submitted their sessions, actually been able to do the arts and culture session live with us. And we're delighted to work with many of you in figuring out how we can add other mediums in upcoming conferences coming forward. And for us, one of the new things that's really happened is on the training capacity building element of the conference. So this is something that when the conference used to be live in person in Dhaka in Bangladesh, we were able to sort of allocate a little bit of a space and time during the conference to have a physical workshop. But on the online format, that's been something that we weren't really able to incorporate in the previous years. But this year we did have a 2-day long training where the session 1 happened on one day, where people were able to get some practical learning, get some thematic understanding of the issue, and be able to actually understand some of the tools and metrics that are able to help in being a training program in getting people to understand how they can implement these types of initiatives in their own work, in their own projects. And then this is something that was carried on onto the second day, where we were able to bring in a lot more participants because people were really interested on the training program, in the format of it, understanding how to put practical use to some of the research elements that we've been working on. And that's something that, again, for a lot of our partners, we would really encourage, if you have ideas on how we can incorporate more practical elements into the online format, we're happy to discuss with people on what are some of the ways that we can be a little bit more interactive and a little bit more innovative in the coming years as well. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, we had some high-level panel sessions where we're really not really looking at project-specific information, but looking at the theme in a broader sense. What are some of the issues that people are dealing with? So we're graced by Jim Ski, who is the chair of the IPCC, who was able to send us a recording discussing about the IPCC report and how we can add more Global South researchers to come through in the upcoming assessments, as well as Professor Saiful Islam, who's also an IPCC lead author, discussing on what are some of the challenges that Global South researchers have in being able to be published, in being able to join these international assessments, international research bodies. We were able to have some really innovative discussions about the role of universities. What does it mean for a university to be able to take the lead on capacity building, something that might be a bit more of a well-trodden path in other countries, but perhaps in the Global South, that linkage doesn't exist at that moment. But what are some of the ways that universities can really support in evidence-based policy making? And how can universities collaborate amongst themselves? Oftentimes, those are some of the connections and activities that we hope to see coming out of research conferences. And we're very, very delighted that by having some targeted sessions discussing about the role of universities, how universities can really link between themselves across time zones, but collaborate on research and really get the message out there. So we're very, very delighted for having some innovative discussions. And hopefully this is not just one-off from this year's conference. There are other touch points throughout the year, and people that have been joining us for these sessions that have been broadcasted live. Hopefully they'll also be joining us in the future conversations that are happening, particularly on unlocking adaptation finance, where we're hoping to have a lot more particular elements and touch points throughout the year in really unpacking that idea of business unusual in accessing finance for local initiatives. Next slide, please. So being an online conference, this is really some of the elements that we understand how successful it's become. And we're very, very delighted. So some of these metrics are what's happened just throughout this week. So when we talk about the reach and the post impressions, those are interactions that have been happening, not just on our social media platforms, but also by resharing and retweeting the efforts that our partners have done on their sessions, on their flyers about the topic that they will be working on throughout the week, and really being able to circulate and help each other be able to get as much of a participation and audience coming throughout the week. And when we look at the tab about post engagements, those are really about people that have seen these social media, the media cards that I mentioned about the key messages, about the live recordings, about the session flyers that are upcoming. Those are interactions that people have had, whether by liking and sharing or by commenting, by sharing the link about their own work. That's very relevant. And we're hoping that as the conversations grow online as well as in person, that these types of engagements are really areas that people are able to collaborate and find inspiration to work on new areas that are not being focused on right now, but those areas that we're able to build up on in upcoming conferences. Next slide, please. So our platform has a capacity of 1,500 people. So we're very, very delighted that we were able to hit the cap of it. When we started the conference, we still had a few, maybe 100 or 2 registrations that were left to be filled. But throughout the week, we've had more and more interactions. As I mentioned, people are finding out about the conference as it happens, as people share and retweet about sessions that they're doing, about the innovative topics that they're hearing about, the presentations that are coming through. And we were able to really fill up the online venue as fully as possible. And hopefully in future years, we're able to have more and more people come. So we're actually able to have a larger cap of people, but throughout the week, a more sustained engagement with people. Next slide, please. So the HOVA platform, where we host the conference over the last 4 years, also allows for a lot more interactions within participants that are there. So these are messages and community boards where people are discussing about the sessions that are coming through, about the topics that they're working on. As I mentioned, a lot of people have shared about research that they're doing themselves and have attended a session where it's been very, very relevant to the work that they're doing, and really reach out to the speakers, talk to the participants that have been there, share the links about their own research projects, and really discuss about ways that they're able to collaborate and network. And on an online platform, that really is something that becomes a bit of a challenge compared to a physical conference. So we're very delighted that people are able to use the platform to the fullest. And perhaps those are areas that we would also like to have ideas and sharing about how we can make it a lot more interactive with people discussing about the work that they're doing. Next slide, please. So this is some metrics from our conference website. So we're again very, very delighted that there are regions and countries in the map that are outside of where our organization is based. We're in Dhaka in Bangladesh, somewhere in the middle right of the map over there. But we're very delighted that some of the other regions that are in disparate time zones from us, a little bit difficult to communicate in most days, but throughout this week, as we've been having sessions that have happened throughout everybody's time zones going through, it's really a 24/7 conference that we try and run. And we're delighted to have people from the other time zones also take a larger share of participation, joining in, finding out about the agenda, going in and joining sessions, and being very, very interactive with the speakers as well as participants that are joining the conference. Next slide, please. So I'd like to thank all of our partners and all of our collaborators that have worked tirelessly over the last couple of weeks, as well as discussing with us over the last couple of months about how to really design it for this year. So we're very, very grateful for all of our supporters, all of our partners, all of our session hosts that have really put in a lot of thinking and a lot of effort in the work that they're doing, but also championing the local initiatives that are happening and bringing in those community voices. So we're very, very grateful for everybody's support, and we're looking forward to more collaborations and future engagements with all of you. Next slide, please. Lastly, I would like to thank my team that have been working behind the scenes with pulling off this conference. It really does take an army to do so. I get quite a lot of the easy lifting jobs. I don't have to do many activities except for just sort of attend the sessions, but really behind the scenes, pulling off those sessions, making sure we have all the platforms set up, all the communications that are happening, making sure that everything is running seamlessly behind the scenes. I do defer to a lot of the decisions that my team do, and I'm very, very grateful for all their support. And having been locked up in for a whole week in the hotel where we have the conference command center, I'm hoping that they're able to take a very relaxing weekend to take some time off after this closing session here today. Next slide, please. So now what I would like to do is to sort of hand over to some of our esteemed panel. So we've been very, very grateful to have some of the support from our partners that are working on supporting us in the Gobeshona initiative, as well as many of the other research perspectives that we're collaborating on. And for us, Gobeshona starts early in the year, and for us, it really sets the tone about some of the activities that are going to be happening throughout the year, culminating at the COPs that usually happen at the end. That really sets the tone for what's the next trending topics that people are going to be focusing on. So for many of you that follow the international discourse, you would know from the previous two COPs, loss and damage has become something, particularly funding for loss and damage has become an issue. And again, those are reflected in the sessions that we find happening throughout our conference and throughout the discussions in the year. And some of the partners that we have on our panel here today are also touch points that we would like to make sure that these conversations are taken forward. So we really have a little bit of a legacy of some of the activities that people are doing and be able to support each other in the activities and initiatives that we see coming forward. So with that, I would like to hand over to Dr. Tom Mitchell, who's the Executive Director for International Institute for Environment and Development, and also one of our long-term collaborators on the CBA conferences. So Tom, over to you, and if you can make a little plug for the conference coming forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Saqib, and a warm welcome from me to everybody joining this closing session, and also an acknowledgement of the huge effort that the team at ICAD has put into organizing the conference. I had the absolute privilege of being in Dakar this time last year, actually a week before in the calendar, and I saw a little insight into the huge amounts of care and attention and effort that was being made to make sure the Gobeshona conference was running smoothly. And I know it takes the team kind of 24/7 of activity to make sure that all time zones can be connected. So huge congratulations, Saqib, to you and the team for pulling off what seems to be a hugely impressive set of results in what you've shared with us. And so and also delighted that members of the team here at IIED have been able to join different panels and to host different things. And that sense of really deep collaboration through this is something that certainly we've cherished and we want to continue into the future. And so, as you highlighted, it's kind of my job to also give an insight into what we might do next and to continue the momentum of Gobeshona. And we've always had this sense that Gobeshona, together with the community-based adaptation conference, was kind of a collection in the calendar of where we could move from discussing these topics into then having a next opportunity in the calendar to be able to come together and to take a very strong kind of practitioner view of what the opportunities are to continue the discussions and to deliver real progress. And so that's what the community-based adaptation conference tries to do. So the next conference is CBA 18. This has now been running through 18 iterations. Phenomenal kind of sense of legacy from Professor Salim Ul-Haq's vision as well from the time when he was at IIED2. And so we're delighted to be holding the next community-based adaptation conference in Arusha in Tanzania. And if you've not spotted it already, it's going to be running from the 6th to the 9th of May. Everybody is welcome to join us. And certainly there's a big in-person opportunity there to engage in a whole variety of different activities. And the themes of the conference this year are very much focused on, one, decolonizing climate action, and two, bringing innovation to locally led adaptation. So there are two big themes this year. But I'm delighted to say that some of the things that we've known and loved from CBA conferences in the past are back. So we are going to be doing field trips again for people to join together with partners in Tanzania. So Tanzania People and Wildlife will take people out to communities and to see projects championing locally led action. So you've got that as an opportunity. There are also already over 100 session proposals received. So the agenda is going to be packed and exciting. We have a whole bunch of other things that we do, including a short film competition that will be announced shortly. There's a marketplace, there's a skills share, there's an opportunity in that to look for job opportunities or to share practice. And then we have this open space in that anybody can organize topics on different areas that then people can come to and explore. So it's a hugely dynamic space. And then, of course, we're going to be continuing the common themes that we often explore: monitoring evaluation, on climate finance, and on nature-based solutions, and a big one on youth agency too. So please do visit the CBA website. We will, hopefully you can share that in the chat and gives you the link to the registration and so on. But it is our opportunity to continue those discussions, and we look forward to seeing many of you there. Then I also want to just highlight a couple of other areas, and I know Saqib pointed to the work that ICAD and IIED have been doing together on loss and damage. And I know it was a year ago that we launched the All Act Alliance, so the Alliance for Locally Led Transformative Action on Loss and Damage, very much with a focus too on trying to bring this practical insight to the challenge of tackling loss and damage, where we felt that too much of the discussion was at this political level, trying to figure out how a fund was going to be designed, and we missed the sense that actually we need to be scaling practical solutions that are guided by the communities that know those impacts most. And so we've been developing All Act for the last 12 months. There's been a lot of activities already. And with this at COP in Dubai, we launched the Salim Ul-Haq Memorial Scholarship and Prize, and that is for researchers from least developed countries and from small island developing states who are able to bring new research forward on the practical experiences and loss and damage to gain some support and to build a community of practice. That scholarship and prize is going to be launched and open for applications within the next month, or certainly in April 2024. And we would encourage everybody to learn more about that by going to the website Loss and Damage Observatory, that also hopefully we can share in the chat. You can read more about the activities of All Act and also learn more about the scholarship and prize. And with that, if you are somebody already that is engaging in research on loss and damage, what we're loving to do through that observatory is to collect the practical experiences around loss and damage that are not often heard or surfaced. And so there is an opportunity there to reach out, to upload your materials, to get some guidance and support if needed. And what we're trying to do in that regard particularly is to provide more insight into the experiences of non-economic loss and damage, which has been really poorly documented to date. So also that's available on the observatory, and so please do get in touch with us on that. And then very shortly, also in early April, we're going to be releasing a new methodology and toolkit to help researchers assess the impacts of non-economic loss and damage, so we can help to provide a degree of standardization and rigor to that. Now, the reason why that's so important right now is because, one, the loss and damage fund is being set up and we need to know where to target the money. Two, we are just embarking on a new cycle of the IPCC, and Jim Skee earlier, as you'd highlighted, talked about the opportunities there, particularly because we need to get loss and damage insights into the IPCC report in a way that's not necessarily been well done to date. And third, because there are a variety of climate justice related court cases around the world that are needing evidence, robust evidence that helps to support them. So really important things there and reasons to get involved. And of course, the need to be able to deploy that insight locally to make sure that we're doing the right things and designing things effectively. And then I think I want to just look ahead very briefly to later in the year. And to acknowledge the fact that another part of this whole architecture of events is climate and development days. Let's not forget that we had climate and development days back for COP in Dubai, and that they are also a great opportunity for this community to maintain a really strong set of insights and connections. And so we'll have more information on that later in the year, but equally don't forget that that's another time where our community can come together. Then I think the only other aspect I'd want to mention in closing is that today is International Women's Day. And of course, a very poignant moment to end the Gobeshona conference that's talked about women's climate justice on many occasions. And actually, it was just yesterday that IIED also released a piece of research that still, for me, is one of the most upsetting, shocking, and dramatic pieces of research that I've seen in recent years, looking at the fact that there are women paying for the impacts of climate change with their wombs, the health impacts and the driving up of hysterectomies, particularly in sugar workers in India, has been revealed through this research. And I hope we can also put the link in, because to me, if there's ever a really dramatic, very poignant call to action, it was released in that research yesterday, where we need to make sure that we fully recognize the impacts of climate change in combination with many other things is ruining lives in the most dramatic ways, and that this is something that we have to address. So please do read that research and see how we can use it to galvanize even greater efforts across our community. And then thank you very much for inviting me, Saqib, and the partnership between ICAD and IIED is one that we, of course, enjoy hugely and look forward to burgeoning further as well into the future. And congratulations again to the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, and very, very inspiring words and some very, very good insights as to what to look forward to and how people can collaborate. So we put in the links on the chat. If everybody is able to sort of join in, or even just go to the IID website and follow some of the upcoming activities as Tom mentioned. And delighted to hear that field visits are back on in CVA. I know that was one of the linchpins of why people would come to the community-based adaptation conference. Certainly when we held them in Dhaka, that was one of the things that we grew over the years. We would have, we started off with one in the earlier years, and then throughout the end, I think the last one in Dhaka that happened, we had 4 field visits happening simultaneously, and it was really about people trying to go and see initiatives firsthand. So thank you so much for pointing towards that. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Shahnaz Musa, who's the CEO of Climate Development Knowledge Network and the Director of South-South North. Shahnaz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Saqib, and thank you, Tom, for making it so difficult for me to impress anybody after you, but I'll try. And given that it's National Women's Day, I will, yes, I'll start from there. So I think first of all, Saqib, I'm still trying to get around my head how you and the team managed to pull this off. I mean, if you look at those time zones and everything, so a huge congratulations to you and your team. And I think watching Gobeshona over the last few years, it's just gone from strength to strength. So thank you and congratulations for not giving up, but actually bettering it each year. So from attending some of these sessions, I think there's lots of learnings for us at South North CDKN in just how the communities at the front lines of the climate crisis, they're not waiting around. All these stories that we heard were stories about action, despite the huge inequalities, the systemic and embedded challenges, including resources and finance. And I think the stories that came through from the communities were about innovation and about empowerment. And it was also, and I think Gobeshona felt like such an amazing space because it was spotlighting all of these stories and looking at the agency that the communities have. So I think what came across is that there's this huge gap, but that things are happening, communities have agencies, and that moving forward, the story of climate justice and actually justice is going to be one of empowerment at the local level. And at the same time, shining the light on the injustice. That was one strong takeaway for me, particularly, as well as members of our team. I think what is also very clear, and just again, listening to the sessions, listening to what was coming out, is that transformation and radical transformation is needed in the space of climate, biodiversity, and finance. And that these changes need to happen at your various levels, from your international right down to your local level, and that the current financial architecture, it feels like saying shifting the status quo is a bit too soft. I think we're at a point where we need to radically change the current financial architecture so that local-led adaptation solutions can happen. I think there's also the need to be quite intentional and specific in addressing the needs of those on the ground, and that a lot of work needs to be done to build trust, because it feels like a lot of the financial current architecture is built from a space of a trust deficit. And I think these are the softer, more intangible things that need to come into shifting how the financial architecture looks. And so for us as an organization based in the South, doing work globally, there were lots of learnings. One was we often feel that we need to take community members to COP to tell their own stories. One of these community members in one of the sessions said, actually, she went to COP, she came back, and her women's group is asking her, now what? And we often saw it as a positive thing, and we needing to rethink that. So I think there were lots of lessons for us that have come out. And in terms of loss and damage, with the fund, we'll be working with one of the co-chairs quite closely. So and looking for stories to feed into the development of the fund. So I'd like to encourage you to reach out to us with those stories. Going forward, our intention is to have quite an active engagement as CBA 18. And then at the bond intersessionals, because our feeling is that that is where we can effect change rather than at COP19. And through this whole process, our efforts will be on local-led action and devolving finance and decision-making. With that, Saki, because I know you're waiting for somebody very important, more important than me, to come and say something. So with that, I'm handing over back to you. And thank you. Thank you very much for pulling this off with your team.
Thank you so much, Shanaz, and never more important than all of us put together. So but I'm really grateful for your words, and in particular for highlighting some of the financial challenges, as you mentioned, that also was something that came upon in some of our key high note sessions on unlocking access to finance at the local levels, where really the messages were about how do we get climate financing to be more trust-based. And that's something, that's an approach that's really followed on some of the other sectors, but the climate financing realm is still very results-based and very prescribed sort of methodologies of financing at the local level. And really some of those messages for many of you that are interested in these topics, as I mentioned, those are conversations that we're hoping to have throughout the year about unpacking how we can make that a little bit more flexible and a little bit more achievable and accessible for local organizations. So I thank you for highlighting that point, and I would recommend everybody to go and look at those sessions throughout this year, and also look out for some of the touch points throughout the year where they can join in on the conversation. So I'm very grateful to have our Honorable Minister, Saber Hussain Chaudhry, who is the Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, be able to join us for a quick overview of the activities that we've been doing in collaboration with them. So, sir, for your benefit, I was just highlighting to the rest of the panel as well as our participants that throughout the week of Gobeshona this year, we were really able to have quite a lot of participation from very many different regions, traditionally areas that we don't get quite a lot of participants tend to get many participation from Bangladesh. This year, we were able to bring in quite a lot from other time zones, which is very encouraging. We had a total of about 68 sessions that happened throughout the week, focusing mainly on addressing loss and damage through locally led adaptation, and what might that look in various different sectors, various different themes, but really trying to unpack what local initiatives are, what are some of the stories that people are getting, what are some of the different ways that people are being able to take climate action and address the loss and damage issue, but really putting local initiatives at the heart of it, at the forefront of it, which traditionally has not been the paradigm. It's been very top down and project heavy, organizations sort of leading it. And throughout this week, we've been sort of exploring a little bit about how the champions on the local level, not just from our regions, but from various different regions and different continents, what are some of the ways that we're able to sort of champion the work that they're doing, and using platforms like this to be able to give them support, to bring them together, to be able to collaborate with them, and really use this sort of networking opportunity to enhance the support that we're able to give at the local level. So Saber, sir, thank you so much for joining. I realize you're pressed for time, and we're very grateful that you're able to be here. Please, sir, your remarks for the conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Saqib, and the rest of the Gobeshona team. And of course, when I think about my participation in previous Gobeshona events, of course, there is a huge hole. Salimba is not here. This was one of his, I say one because he had many flagship projects. And I think this was certainly one of them. It was something he would always talk about with great anticipation, enthusiasm. He would ask us to mark our diaries and calendars well before the event, so that if we had the chance to meet, he would say, "Look, this is going to happen, so please keep this period free." And of course, loss and damage is something that he was able to flag very early on in the discourse, and it's something that he passionately worked for, advocated very strongly. So, one of the reasons I'm making time and joining this is also really to acknowledge the absolutely outstanding and the groundbreaking work that he had done. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take that forward. And I'm so happy to hear from you that this has been a very rich discussion. You mentioned, I think, 68 sessions over the week. And of course, for Bangladesh and many countries who are at the receiving end of climate change, loss and damage is becoming an increasingly important part. Let me, however, say that in the case of Bangladesh, of course, loss and damage has to be quantified. It has to be understood. we have to see at what point adaptation, basically goes to loss and damage. But when we look at it holistically, we feel that if you look at the language of the UNFCCC, it's averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. So loss and damage is really part of one continuum. It doesn't mean that we basically fold our arms and allow everything to slide into loss and damage. It means that we have to take every possible measure to avert and minimize. So, that's where the mitigation and the adaptation aspect comes in. And the more effective we are in adapting, the lesser will be the burden on loss and damage. So that is something that we are very aware of. So, we are trying to ensure that not everything slides there, but we know inevitably some of it will slide. Because if we look at the status of global temperature increase, although we have still technically kept 1.5 alive, I say technically because I think that's the reality. I mean, it's not looking very good at the moment. And from what we hear, it could be anything from 2.6 up to even 3. So if we are having this amount of loss and damage now at 1.1, we can imagine what the scenario will be if it is doubled or even higher than that. And it's not just degrees, even 1/10 of a degree makes a huge difference. So the importance of locally led adaptation and what you were mentioning, the imperative of bottom-up approaches rather than heavy top-down approaches is always going to be key. I think as with all adaptation, which is local, loss and damage also has to be addressed at the local level. And where we are at in terms of the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change is that we are really trying to ramp up our preparedness to access the loss and damage funding as and when it's going to become available. So Bangladesh wants to ensure that we are one of the first countries to be knocking on the door when the funds are available. Of course, it's not just the access to the funds, it's also ensuring that we make effective use of the funds. So the prudent utilization of the fund and ensuring that they actually go to where they are needed in terms of the loss and damage agenda is going to be very important. The other area, if I may just talk about very briefly, I know you have a timeline and we'll be finishing shortly, is that the importance of actionable research. I think this was also something that Sinima would also talk about, the fact that we are essentially ground zero when it comes to climate change. And Bangladesh is perhaps the most richest laboratory and the richest place in the world where you can conduct these research exercises. So I look forward to the ministry working with yourselves, with ECAD and the others to see how we can identify the areas of research and then put them to use when it comes to shaping our policies and our responses to the various challenges that we have. So let me, from my side, say a very big thank you to everyone who has taken the time out to be in this event. Of course, the digital platform allows us to connect people across various time zones, and that's exactly what you have done. So I certainly hope that Gobeshona is going to grow, not just in terms of participants, but also in terms of the depth that it explores the researchers with. And we look forward to collaborating with you and supporting your various endeavors. So Saqib, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And what is important now is as the conference comes to a close, what do we do with all of the information and the rich data that we have generated through this interaction and through this platform? And I look forward to interacting with you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarvar sir. It's very, very encouraging to have your support and always keen to collaborate with you more. So on behalf of the Gobeshona community, please do feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to find ways that we can synergize and collaborate going forward. And I'm sure we'll be bothering you in many more days to come. So we look forward to a lot of more conversations that we might be able to have on these topics. Thank you so much for your work, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So now I'd like to move on to our next speaker, Ms. Sophie de Konik, who's the Global Climate Facility Manager for the Locale project at UNCDF. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sakib, for the opportunity to join the Gobeshona conference once more. So we've been really happy to engage in the session. Just for us to refer, we had a session on working with nature and communities for building resilience to the impacts of climate change, drawing largely from the experience we have in Bangladesh, in fact, with the Logic program. And also we took that as a chance to launch a report where we've looked at to what extent sustainable natural resource management or nature-based solution was a solution of choice when grants funding reach the communities and the local government without guiding them in what they want to do. We observe that in 1/3 of the case, they will choose solutions that embed sustainable natural resource management. So we were really happy. And also another session on unlocking adaptation finance was also of great interest to us in how we can work to make finance for local adaptation more accessible. So those were two. I mean, of course, amongst the 68 you mentioned, and I know colleagues attended many more, but those are two that where we had a more active role. Now, in terms of key takeaways, I mean, like always, and perhaps at the risk of repeating other speakers, obviously it is a very rich platform, very diverse when we see the range of partners and partners coming from very different world originally, in a way. I mean, geographically, literally, but also from different type of organization, different specialties, and originally perhaps different school of thoughts at time. And I feel that with Gobeshona and also under the convening role of ICAD, you really manage to pull, partners together that, sometimes, a few years ago would look at each other thinking that, their solution is better and actually, we are really past that stage. We know, I think we all have a piece or two of the puzzle, whatever level we work, whatever country, whatever role we have to play, we all have, a piece of the puzzle. And I think, more and more we manage to come together to start, looking at those solutions. Now, what is of great interest to us, I mean, I mentioned the session about making finance more accessible. I mean, the kind of challenge, of course, what Tom mentioned in terms of innovation, in terms of, the quality of aid and M&E, nature, youth, finance, all of that is of course, everything resonates. The kind of challenge we also trying to address all together is how we can reach the scale that we need for the finance and how we can take all these good practices and then make sure that various local actors, be they private sector, local communities, CBOs, local governments, can actually access the capacity building support or exchange. It could be peer-to-peer and get the resources that they need and they deserve to access to actually take more action. So it's not all about the funding, but funding can help. And there are additional costs indeed in dealing with those new risks. So that is something that we will keep working on this year, and as long as we need to, I suppose. So we will be joining the NAP Expo because it's in Bangladesh. You will see more of our colleagues from Asia. We try to really, take advantage of our of where we are all seated in this program a bit across the world. So we'll be there at the CBA. We'll have colleagues that are actually based in Tanzania or Eastern Africa. It's nice to hear about the field trip. In fact, we have some projects in the Dodoma region. Perhaps we can reach out and see whether, those should be added to the option of projects to be visited. And then we will also keep engaging in the official process at the UNFCCC. So either making submissions ourselves as an observer to try, indeed, like we discussed, to put this, to somehow elevate the practices so that they can inform the dialogue. So that includes the bond session and other bodies on topic of adaptation finance and so on. Looking more towards the kind of countries where we work, local governments, communities where we work, we will be organizing some annual events in May. Actually, it looks like it's the week after the CBA 18, and we will convene a workshop for negotiators so that this practice can actually so that's how we connect the dots, because it could well be that there is demand in the countries, but do we take advantage of all the entry points there is to influence the UNFCCC processes or the UNFCCC financial mechanism? Perhaps not enough. So if of interest, please reach out. Back to back, we'll have a policy and technical dialogue on scaling up financing of locally led adaptation, with the focus on the instrument of performance-based grant, which starts being used by more and more partners. We'll have the board for local, but that's more of a kind of different event. The two others are much more multi-partner, I suppose. And then on the last day, there should be an initial meeting with the representative from the 30+ countries where we work, again, with a view to connect the dots between the many and increasingly a number of high-level political initiatives on, adaptation finance, climate finance, access to finance, sometimes coalition groups, and how do we actually help, again, connect what we're discussing here with this higher-level debate, because there is a lot ongoing, and so there is a lot to build on. And perhaps just one last word, hearing all what is being said about the loss and damage, we have seen somehow over the last 10 years with the local that the adaptation grants that local governments and communities were getting through this initiative, they were actually being used to not only, mitigate the loss and damage through adaptation, but already to address. I mean, if you're a community and you get a grant finance, you will, and you need to reconstruct, or you need to, develop new livelihood, you will use that. So that continuum that the minister was highlighting is very much a reality. So we would like to look at the 2,000+ investment that we've seen, coming really from the bottom up, and do an assessment to what extent has it been already happening, and therefore could we actually use those channels of channeling finance in order to be also fit for not only mitigating but also addressing loss and damage, with a view to speed up, because we cannot reinvent new systems all the time. And if countries have systems that work, if communities can work with their local governments and amongst themselves, well, we should, in my view, somehow take the opportunity to work with what they have already built. And so that's a piece of work that we hope to be doing this year, and we'll be happy to share it also with this community. So thank you very much once more, Sakib, and the whole team, and congrats for an amazing conference once more. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and also thank you for highlighting some of the touch points that, as I keep mentioning, for people to be able to join in on the conversations that you're doing as well, and be able to support. And I really take your point that, it's been in the climate and the development sector, it's often been a very siloed approach of, institutions and organizations and projects being very, very meticulous about doing it in their own way, and very little discussion about the work that they're doing, and not really finding any synergies and collaborations. And really the time for that now is way past. And I'm very, very encouraged by a lot of the support from all of our partners, as well as yourselves, for our initiatives, and we'll be very, very grateful to find collaborations going forward. And in particular, for those of you that are long-term COP goers, might have seen the LLA pavilion, the locally led adaptation pavilion that's been started back from COP26, I believe was the first one. And certainly we're hoping to have that engagement again coming up for the future COPs. And again, for a lot of you that are following and working on these sorts of issues, please do look out for that pavilion. Please do look out for us and several of our colleagues that are there. And please keep networking and collaborating. Thank you so much, Sophie. So last but not least, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Nathaniel Matthews, who is the CEO of the Global Resilience Partnership and a long-term collaborator and supporter of the Gobeshona network. So Nate, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sakib, and thanks to everyone. It's a hard act to follow, because I think everything has been so well said up to this point. But luckily, we don't have too much time, so that also works to my advantage in this case, because I don't think I have a whole lot of new things to interject. But I just really wanted to emphasize that I think one of the the great strengths of the Gobeshona conference is as Shanaz mentioned, it's really gone from from strength to strength every year, which is fantastic. But also it's just its accessibility. So Keeb, you were mentioning this year about, you know, the translation you were doing and also having sign language and things like that. And when we think about you know, events like the COP that are ludicrously expensive and out of reach and hard to access in so many ways, that there's so much opportunity to really share knowledge and come together as a community within events like Gobeshona. And that just is really heartwarming, and it is such a great you know, event to keep going every year. And so congratulations to the whole team for that. And it's also really nice to have the event, the closing event here on International Women's Day. As Tom mentioned, there are still huge, you know, milestones and stretches to reach. And I think I saw a tweet from Antonio Guterres today saying that we're still centuries away from, you know, equality within the, you know, women's rights compared to men. So long way to go in that. But, you know, across the whole ICAD team, there's so many fantastic leaders, and it's just great to see that leadership coming through. And GRP is obviously a longtime collaborator with ICAD, and it's great. We've got our work. We had a session this morning with UNDP, supporting the great entrepreneurs coming out of Africa. We've been obviously collaborating with the other managing partners on the Resilience Hub, and we'll continue to do that throughout this year into the future. So I think really I just wanted to say thank you. We are excited to see what the year brings. We'll be having some sessions at London Climate Week and New York Climate Week, and just really excited to continue working together, and a big congratulations on another successful Gobeshona conference. So thank you, Sakib.
Thank you so much, Nate, and thank you so much for plugging the accessibility of the conference, but that's also been something that we've been thinking about in terms of a lot of the collaborations that we've been having, as Sophie and Shahnaz also mentioned, a lot of the other platforms becoming very, very difficult for organizations and local community members to really access and be able to sort of talk about the work and find the supporters and collaborators. And so we hope to be able to keep this conference platform, be available online, be able to show all of our sessions and our thematic topics on our YouTube channels, make them as open, accessible as possible, and be able to share some of the innovative research projects. So a lot of the people have been sharing the direct papers from the authors, or even from the project managers, or even some of the activities that have been happening, and be able to share the links and share the research, share excerpts from their actual the very dense IPCC reports, but analysis and summarizations of it that really do help community members to be able to garner evidence for their initiatives, to be able to support the activities that they're doing in their advocacy. And again, we're hoping to have more of that opportunity later on this year through the regional hubs that we do in partnership with GRP, as well as through the Resilience Hub later on at COP. So thank you so much for highlighting that. With that, I'm going to now finally call an end to a week-long endeavor from our side and from all of our partners. It was a really, really big initiative, as Nate mentioned, but thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all to our participants that have been joining. And again, if you haven't been able to join all of the sessions and thematic activities that have been happening, feel free to look out for our YouTube channels, and we'll be sharing them on our pages as well as our partners' pages. So please do let us know if there are ways that we might be able to move from strength to strength going forward from this year into next year. And thank you all for all of your support. With that, I'd like to close the Gobeshona conference in 2024. Thank you so much.